Welcome to State of the World with me, Sally Lockwood in Dubai. This episode is talking about news that people have been waiting for and hoping for months, years, after 2 horrific years of war in Gaza that have claimed and changed the lives of so many people on both sides, that have ruined so many lives. We are now reporting that Hamas and Israel have agreed a ceasefire deal, a phase 1 of Donald Trump's peace proposal for Gaza, which will see all the hostages coming home. And I'm joined tonight to discuss this by Danny Sidderman, an Israeli lawyer who specialises and is extremely knowledgeable in Israeli politics, Jerusalem, Israeli settlements, the two-state solution, one of the most credible voices out there. It's so good to have you with us, Danny. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
Now, I mean, your analysis very much often predicts where Israeli policy is going. In light of that, what do you make of this breakthrough?
It's a pivotal moment. Had anybody told us a week ago that we would be within 72 hours of a release of the hostages and of a ceasefire, I don't think it would have been terribly credible. What we're witnessing is unprecedented to the extent that an American president, highly problematic for much of the world, including Americans, has weighed in on a subject that has affected a seminal change in the dynamic of a brutal conflict. And remarkably, he is apparently succeeding in the immediate term. And the immediate term is to effect a ceasefire, get the redeployment of Israeli forces to a minimal extent, and release the hostages and to return the bodies of those who were killed in captivity. And it's quite remarkable. This would not have happened without Trump, and I can't believe that I'm saying that. In 1996, Netanyahu was elected for the first time as Israeli prime minister, and he met with President Clinton. And when Clinton left the meeting with Netanyahu, he reportedly said, and this has been verified by a number of people, "Who the fuck is the superpower here?" Netanyahu was strutting around as if he were the superpower. That question has gone unanswered since 1996 because nobody has challenged Netanyahu over the question, who is the superpower, until Trump. And were it not for the fact that Trump decided this is going to happen, and he enlisted all of the power of the presidency, brought about Qatari engagement, Turkish engagement, the international community, this would not have happened. The Lord moves in mysterious ways.
It certainly does. And do you think, though, that for a time, I mean, certainly for me, for a time, it felt like Benjamin Netanyahu was out of control and Donald Trump wasn't managing to achieve much when it came to Gaza. And then there was that attack on Doha, on the Hamas residents, on Qatari soil, which seemed to really piss Donald Trump off. Do you think that was a turning point?
There was a process here. I think that there were ample indications that Trump was becoming impatient with Netanyahu. Netanyahu has been accustomed to the fact that he could play anybody, especially American presidents, as he wished. That's not the kind of thing that goes over well with Trump. But indeed, the turning point was the failed attack, Israeli attack on Hamas officials in Qatar. Somebody glibly put this today. This was the most successful failed attack in history.
And just looking at where we are now, this phase one in the negotiations of a peace deal, do you think we'll see a phase two? Or in reality, is this just a hostage deal and we won't necessarily see the rest of it play out when it comes to Gaza's future?
Nobody can really give a clear answer to that.
What's your hunch?
My hunch is that there are things that have happened which will change the dynamics of this conflict and the ways that the international community, Israelis and Palestinians, will engage on this. I am not at all sure that it is according to the trajectory as anticipated by this deal that will proceed from stage one to stage two to stage three. Much of it depends on the resolve of President Trump and those who he's enlisted in order to sustain this further. But what we have witnessed has radically changed the entire landscape. Support for Israel internationally has collapsed, and the worst is yet to come. The tsunami is approaching. It's not behind us. When journalists are allowed into Gaza, and we witness up close something that which has not happened sufficiently, the scope of the devastation. Gaza will look like Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Dresden, and a lunar landscape. That means that the collapse of support for Israel, the major collapse, may be ahead of us, and we're going to have to sweat to recover our legitimacy. And we should have to sweat to recover our legitimacy. We were the offended party on October 7th. The slaughter was unspeakable. It's traumatized the Israeli population, correctly so. Today there isn't a sense of salvation. For the first time, people are smiling in ways that we have not been smiling since October 7th, 2023. But that's only half of the story. The other half is what we have inflicted on Gaza in response to that, which goes well beyond any reasonable interpretation of a proportionate response. All of these things are creating a reality which is unlike anything we've seen before. We are in uncharted waters. It's not that that we don't know what the future holds. The future is unknowable.
Yeah.
Now, there are new things in play. There is a renewed push for the two-state solution. We haven't seen anything to this extent in recent memory. There is the recognition of Palestine by some of Israel's closest allies. Will this remain another hollow gesture? We have been witnessing hollow gestures since Oslo, talking about a peace process which has led nowhere. 30 odd years after the Oslo agreements, we are not 1 inch closer to the end of occupation. If this remains a hostage deal, a ceasefire, it is enormously important. It's important for the Israeli public to begin to heal. It's also important to us to begin to confront what has become of us. It's important to the people in Gaza, who are in desperate need of humanitarian support, health care, food, etc. But that is only the beginning of the next chapter. And how that next chapter will be written, I don't know. We cannot allow it to go back to business as usual.
I'm just interested to get your take on this. So once all the hostages have been returned, what is the incentive then for Benjamin Netanyahu to not just continue the fighting? What do you make of that? Do you trust that the ceasefire will hold? And what is the biggest single threat to it, say, in the next 30 days?
And there's only one thing in which I trust Prime Minister Netanyahu, and that is to do whatever it takes to stay in power. And if staying in power means to resume the war in Gaza, he will resume the war in Gaza. Let there be no doubt about it. It is not dependent on his agenda. It's dependent on the will of the international community and, most importantly, President Trump, to hold him to a good faith commitment to proceed to end this, not to allow it to be a hostage deal and a temporary ceasefire, but to proceed to conditions in which Hamas will be disarmed, but there will be reconstruction of Gaza by an international effort, but one which will incorporate Palestinians, because there is no future for Gaza that is built on international aid. This will be a Palestinian effort. Is there going to be the resolve to pursue that? If the answer is yes, then we're in business. If the international community, and first and foremost Trump, who is not renowned for having an enormously robust attention span, if his mind or attention wanders elsewhere, this isn't over.
And do you think, or do you see Donald Trump and Tony Blair governing Gaza? And do you think that's a good idea?
I can think of very few ideas that are worse.
Yeah.
Tony Blair? Really?
Explain why that's such a shocking
Okay.
suggestion in the Middle East.
Tony Blair is not held in high regard throughout the Middle East. He is not held in high regard among Palestinians. I will not go into the details of why this is so, but by the end of Tony Blair's tenure as quartet emissary, he was persona non grata, more or less, in Gaza. What in the world possesses him to think that he has anything to give to Gaza? The hubris of this. What is he possibly thinking? Worse than that, okay, I can understand that certain kinds of people are driven by calculus of ego that none of us mortals can understand. Why in the world would anybody see the future of Gaza pass through any kind of major role for Tony Blair? It just escapes me.
Given that Tony Blair is such a controversial figure in the Middle East, not least because of the war in Iraq, but also his role that you alluded to there as Middle East envoy for many in the international community that he carried out following leaving office as Prime Minister. Palestinians, many Palestinians do not trust him. They find him pro-Israel. They find him biased. And he's not exactly well liked by Palestinians, as you say. That said, do you see this happening? Do you think this is a plan that we could see come to fruition, or do you think it's doomed to fail just because of the sort of tone-deaf nature of what is being suggested?
Had you asked me a month ago, would it be conceivable that Trump will pursue a policy that will force Netanyahu into a deal on this? That was not on my bingo card. Okay? So one should be cautious about assumptions made. I cannot see a trajectory which involves a credible reconstruction of Gaza, the end of the carnage, moving forward, reconstruction, the creation of a political horizon, the engagement of Palestinians. I cannot see any of that happening in which Tony Blair fills a significant role. But again, he's a former prime minister in dealing with this, and I'm a marginal Israeli attorney from Beitar Street in Jerusalem, so who knows?
You're so well regarded, Danny, and you're so knowledgeable because you're a legal brain. You're an Israeli, and you have studied settlement expansion, which is obviously such a hot topic at the moment because we've seen such aggressive expansion of settlements in the West Bank in recent years. I was in Israel, I was in Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, just a couple of weeks ago. And I was speaking with some Palestinians who said, it's not just happening in the West Bank, it's happening in East Jerusalem, less than a mile away from here. People's houses are being taken. What do you think this deal means now for that, for Israeli settlements, the potential annexation of the West Bank? Do you think we could see that slowing down? What do you think is going to happen here?
We are in a Netanyahu administration which is unengageable. They are hell-bent on creating a reality in which no Palestinian statehood is possible. They're engaged in policies that are aimed to guarantee this. Areas in which Israel would be in some way responsive, including Netanyahu, to international engagement. No more. Netanyahu is unshackled, and we are confronting a conflict that is careening out of control. I would say that there are a number of elements to this. Number one, settlement expansion of strategic implications, ones which will make the creation of a viable, contiguous Palestinian state impossible. That is accelerating the notorious E1 plan, which would fracture the West Bank and cut East Jerusalem off from its environs, has been approved. Since 1996, this has been the quintessential red line laid down by the international community, say, don't dare approve E1, and E1 has been approved. Secondly, we are witnessing a metastasizing occupation in Jerusalem, and one which I believe is connected to the underlying causes of the war in Gaza in ways that we haven't sufficiently understood. What we've been witnessing in Jerusalem for the last 20 years are the ascendancies of religious movements who weaponize faith. Religious pyromaniacs. Among Israelis, Jews, there are the biblically motivated settlers who are displacing Palestinians in places like Silwan and Sheikh Jarrah. There is the messianically motivated Temple Mount movement. Yesterday, Ben Gvir made another triumphal incursion into Al-Aqsa, the Temple Mount, where Jewish prayer is not allowed by policy of the government of Israel.
Just a few weeks ago when I was there.
He did it yesterday again. And he went on camera and he said the manner in which we, Israel, are asserting our sovereignty over this Temple Mount site, which is Al-Aqsa, in violation of the status quo, is exactly what we should be doing in Gaza. We are unless the status quo is restored and an equilibrium is restored in Jerusalem, by the time the ceasefire goes into effect, the countdown to the next round of convulsive violence will begin. If the current trajectory of religious radicalization continues, particularly in regard to the Temple Mount Al-Aqsa, it is only a matter of time until we see another conflagration. In addition to that, what we're witnessing is the establishment of the hegemony of an exclusive Israeli rule. The mindset in much of Israel is we're alone in Jerusalem. We can do whatever we want. Well, I'm sorry, we're not alone in Jerusalem. There's another national collective here. 60% of this city are Israeli, 40% are Palestinian. The Israelis have all of the political power. The Palestinians have none. Equally important, what we're witnessing in this radicalization is the ascendancy of faith communities whose beliefs are exclusionary and incendiary, and the marginalization of the traditional religious stakeholders in the city. A senior Christian prelate in Jerusalem, the most senior, said to me, Jerusalem is fast becoming a place that is no longer hospitable to Christianity. That is a staggering statement. There must be a concerted international effort, including by Israelis and Palestinians, to secure the character of Jerusalem, because the character of Jerusalem is in danger in ways that we've not witnessed in centuries, and there will be no forward movement in an attempt to resolve the political issues here unless the character of Jerusalem is preserved, where no community, no national community, no religious community needs to struggle to maintain its identity or the integrity of its holy sites. That's the challenge ahead of us.
And Danny, just in light of that, in light of the radicalization that you're describing, the aggressive Israeli settlement expansion, is the idea of a two-state solution now dead, or does this deal potentially resuscitate it?
Don't forget that I'm speaking from Jerusalem, and resurrection is something that the city is familiar with. Okay, so that should be said, and that should be said at the outset. I'm often described as an expert on Jerusalem. There's no such thing as an expert on Jerusalem. There's an expert on Mameluke pottery in the 16th century in Jerusalem. There's expertise on the 19th century status quo in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I have one expertise, and that is the mechanics of the occupation in East Jerusalem. If you have an occupation and it breaks down, bring it into my auto shop. I will know which valves to oil and how to repair it. My goal isn't peace. My goal isn't the two-state solution. My goal is the end of occupation in a manner that is compatible with the national interests of both Israelis and Palestinians. And being familiar with the mechanics of occupation ends in one way. It ends in a border. There are no two ways about it. The two-state solution may be dead. It's dead because it was killed. The one-state solution is dead because it never really existed. It's a fantasy. Now, I, for one, would have no trouble living in a state where there would be equal rights among Palestinians and Israelis. There is no possibility of reaching that unless there will first be a border ending occupation. Now, the question as to whether that exists or not depends on hard facts on the ground. The settlement enterprise has been geared to make sure that it will not be possible to draw a border. And there has been quite a good deal of success for those who are attempting to do that. I want to break this down into raw data. Today, there are 700,000 settlers, Israeli settlers, living in the occupied West Bank and occupied East Jerusalem. In order to arrive at an agreement that will be mutually acceptable to Palestinians and Israelis, including land swaps, it will be necessary to relocate 200,000 settlers and to bring them back into Israel proper. The others can be integrated into Israel in the framework of a land swap. If Israel has the capacity and the will to relocate 200,000 settlers, the two-state solution is alive. If not, it's dead. If it's dead, we will have to come back to it. It may take a generation, but we will have to, because there is no other way in which Israelis can liberate Palestinians and liberate ourselves from the curse of occupation except by means of a border.
And clearly we're not going to see that under the current Israeli government, who have voted in favour of annexing the West Bank. Do you think that this deal puts Benjamin Netanyahu's already shaky coalition at more risk? could we see Benjamin Netanyahu leave office soon?
My daughters tell me that I have been saying that we will be rid of Netanyahu since their early childhood, and they are now proud mothers of my grandchildren. Having said that, we are going into an election cycle. Netanyahu has lost the support of all of the elites of Israel, all of them. Captains of industry, people of the arts, academicians, etc. Netanyahu is considered to be a major threat to the long-term viability of Israel, I would think by a majority of Israelis. He does have the support of a very solid base. If there will be elections, and they will be fair, because I'm not alone in suspecting that there will be attempts to disrupt these elections and maybe prevent them from happening, I believe that over the next year we will see Netanyahu stepping down of power or forced out of power. Nothing good will happen. No forward movement towards healing will happen as long as Netanyahu is in power. At best, we will see it through this immediate crisis of ceasefire and hostages. There will be no serious forward movement as long as Netanyahu is in power, and there are clear indications that his political future is measured in weeks and months and not years.
Do you think that this deal over Gaza is about Gaza, or is it about Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu's political careers?
If we begin to examine the motivations of people and politicians of doing what they do, we'll never see the end of this. Had you told me that I would see Trump as somebody who has had the huge positive impact that he's had, I would have thought it's impossible. Even today, when I see what President Trump is inflicting on American democracy, how can I possibly feel sympathy for this person? On the other hand, to be honest, without him, this would not have happened. How long his interest will be sustained, we shall see. Whether he will be perseverant, we shall see. I know of very few people, I know of nobody who trusts Netanyahu's good faith and goodwill, and that includes his supporters.
Well, that is something. But, you know, Danny, I guess let me give you a final thought here. Your final thought tonight for a traumatized Israel, for a traumatized Gaza, is hope back on the table? And what are your predictions for what comes next?
When the hostages are returned and the ceasefire settles and the extent of the horror of what has been inflicted, what we have inflicted on Gaza becomes apparent, we're going to be confronting a lunar landscape. And we will have to begin anew with two deeply traumatized people, and please don't get me involved in equivalence or non-equivalence, two peoples who are deeply traumatized. 10 million Israelis, 10 million Palestinians living on this side of the Jordan River. None of us are going to evaporate. And we have to begin in a very sober way. How do we recover a future for our peoples, for our children, for our grandchildren? It is not going to be easy. But there is absolutely no alternative. So we have to begin afresh and begin in a very sober way to rebuild.
Danny Sidderman, I always learn so much listening to you. Thank you so much for joining us for this really big moment. Let's hope let's hope we can all look to a brighter dawn for you all living in Israel, Gaza and the West Bank. My thanks to Danny Sidderman and to you for watching and listening. This is a completely independent channel. Hit subscribe if you've liked the episode. It's completely free to subscribe to our channel, and it makes a big difference into how we grow. You'll also see when all our episodes drop, and I'll be doing an interview with someone in Gaza tomorrow, so that episode will drop next, and then Tara and I will be back again together after that. So please hit like, leave a comment, share this with your friends, and I'll see you again really soon.